My name is Alina. I'm 25 years old, but I'll start from the very beginning. I got married early when I was 17. My husband was 2 years older than me. He was my first high school love, at least I thought so. Yes, there was a liking for him, even a passion at first, and then it turned into a habit. My husband carried me in his arms, dusted me off, took care of me when I was pregnant, so he spoiled me. A year after we married, my daughter was born. I didn't go to school or work, and my husband studied and worked. It is true that money was tight. My husband was just beginning to make a career, and I was beautiful and therefore capricious. Other than taking care of the baby, I did almost nothing around the house. My mother was doing it, and she didn't like it. I began to get annoyed with everything: the house, the family, and my husband. In total, we lived with him for 5 years, and with those years I felt for him completely cooled down. Although the fact that I do not love him, I realized after the birth of my daughter. All this time, I just let him love me. Then one day I looked in the mirror and realized that my husband was not the man I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. I began to dream of a rich prince on a white horse who would take me and my daughter to the distant lands, where I would drown in luxury. I imagined myself a rich lady. Of course, my husband wasn't an alcoholic or a boatman. We were not poor, but not luxurious either, and I wanted more, for myself and for my daughter. And so I waited for my prince, God damn him. I met Vitas, 33 years old. His parents had emigrated to Switzerland where he lived. He speaks good Russian, has his own international tourist business, a chain of his own hotels for tourists. At first, we just corresponded with him secretly from my husband, but then we communicated via Skype. I was a caring mother the whole time, pretending to be a loving and tender wife, despite the fact that sex with my husband had become a part of everyday life. At the same time, I was dreaming about my prince, whom I had already fallen in love with no memory and a new luxurious life. And then that long-awaited day arrived. Vitas was going to come to Russia and visit our city. I was in seventh heaven. The only thing that scared me was the upcoming conversation with my husband, because he loved me. Vitas arrived a week after informing me of this. I met him at the airport with a gorgeous bouquet. Then we went to the hotel where he rented a business class room. After that, we took a walk around the city and then went back to the hotel room, which is where everything first happened between me and him. I felt like I was in a fairy tale. I hung out in his room for 2 days, turned off my cell phone, and at the time I thought about nothing but my happiness. 2 days later, Vitas told me that he had finished his business in Russia, that he was going home, and was ready to take me and my daughter with him. Me as his bride. I immediately agreed. There was a crucial moment to talk to my husband. When I got home, my husband attacked me, telling me where I was and everything, that he had already called all the hospitals and morgues, and was going to file a police report. But then I told him that I was leaving him because I had met and fell in love with another man. I told him that I was leaving with him and that I was taking my daughter with me. He fell to his knees and cried and begged me to think, but he seemed so pathetic to me at that moment. I told him not to humiliate himself, not to embarrass himself, but to take things as they were. All he had to do was give his written consent for his daughter to go abroad. He said that if I decided, I could leave, but he would not give me his daughter. I threw a tantrum, called him a loser, that because of his stupid jealousy and resentment, he deprives his daughter of a bright future. Then I began to convince him that I was not depriving his daughter, that she could come to him on vacation, and he could come to visit us. We were even ready to pay for his trip, that I was not going to deprive my daughter of her own father. They would Skype every day, but my husband was reluctant. I went back to Vitas and tearfully told him everything. Vitas hastened to console me and offered to go, but without my daughter, to look around, to live with him for a couple of months, and then come back and get a divorce, and then we'll find a way to take my daughter. If necessary, we'll give her husband some money, and if he doesn't agree, we'll find another way to do it without his consent. This is Russia, where everything is bought and sold right up to the elections in the country. We'll bribe someone, and he'll be deprived of his paternal rights if he gets in the way. In that case, he'll never see his daughter again. We'll think of something. I told him I needed to pack my things, to which he laughingly replied that I should only take my documents, and as for things, he would buy them for me on my arrival, whatever I wanted. Old things for me to leave here along with my old life to my husband as a memento. Let him look at them and remember the woman he lost. These words made me feel a prick of conscience for the first time, because my husband was not guilty of anything. When I came home to get my documents, I started to persuade my husband again to let my daughter go with me. I said that millions of people meet and break up. Admitted that yes, I was being mean to him. I even asked for forgiveness, but there is no need to deprive my daughter of a better life because of unnecessary resentment. But he did not want to listen to me. He started to talk about thinking again, said that it was a blur and that he was ready to forgive me everything. But I didn't care anymore. I said that I would come back and we would continue the conversation in court. Just before we left, Vidas told me that we had to stop by his hotel in Turkey on the way. Some unforeseen things had come up, just for a day, to sort out some formalities, and from there we would fly to Switzerland and at the same time relax. I was glad. In Turkey, we checked into the hotel. We were met and taken to our room, his private room, as he told me, with champagne and a light breakfast. He opened the bottle, poured glasses, and said, "Here's to new life." After the champagne, I felt sick. My eyes were swimming, and I passed out. That was the end of my fairy tale and the beginning of a real horror movie. I woke up in a windowless room, completely naked on the floor, without my phone and documents. After a while, 3 guys of Slavic nationality came in and congratulated me on my arrival. I started shouting and protesting, calling Vidas, and they told me that they didn't know any Vidas and that I was their property now. Then I was beaten and abused. This went on for 2 days, where they kept me in this cell completely naked, beating me, abusing me, stabbing me with some crap. I still had a bad perception of the reality of what was happening. At first I thought it was just a nightmare, and then that I had died and gone to hell. But I was wrong. It was only an honor, and the real hell was waiting for me ahead. These guys came in and took me to the shower, made me shower, then threw some clothes on and demanded I get dressed. Then they took me to a room where a man of about 45 to 50 years of Southern ethnicity was sitting and informed me that I was meat from now on, that my life was in his hands, and that I was working for him from that day on. He asked me if I had any idea who I worked for. Later I learned that this same Vidas, or whatever his name was one of a bunch of couriers who deliver beautiful girls for prostitution, not only from Russia, but Belarus, Moldova, Poland, Czech Republic, and other countries. They are lured under the guise of a job, a career in art, or, as in my case, a new, beautiful, easy life. And then they sell them in brothels. Although there are enough people who want to go, they are not interested in drug addicts and girls of passion. They choose the clean and beautiful, and they don't mind the married ones. So when I protested that I would not become a prostitute, they hit me again. And then they shoved pictures of my daughter in my face and told me that if I refused to work, if I tried to run away or commit suicide, there were their people in my city, they knew my address. They would find me and rehabilitate my family. Then they made me call my husband and tell him that I had found my happiness, that I would have children of my own, that I was no longer interested in him or my daughter. Again, they reminded me of my daughter, asking if I really didn't need her. I did as they said. My husband told me not to call again and to forget the number once and for all. At the same time, this guy said that if I was smart, obedient, and did a good job, I would get a nice bonus. What followed was 6 months of hell. I was sold like cattle at the market, bullying, humiliation, and beatings became the norm. Several times I got pregnant, had abortions, and then I was forcibly sterilized, and now I could no longer have children. The clients were mostly spinsters, sadists, and scumbags, sometimes even several at a time. It hurt and disgusted me to think about it. After a year and a half, I managed to break away, thanks to chance. A client of mine, an older man, picked me up, told me that I looked a lot like his daughter, and I told him about my misfortunes. He asked me to run away, but I said no, telling him that they would kill my family. To which he convincingly told me that threatening my daughter was just a threat and a bluff. When a woman leaves her husband and child and runs off with her lover, it's not uncommon for anyone, so it's unlikely that anyone will give a damn. But when there is physical violence against a member of the family, they can get away with it. And what's the point of doing anything about my daughter after she escapes? To hang another problem on themselves, they won't risk it. In general, he persuaded me, and he managed to deceive me and bring me to the embassy. And as I found out on the spot, this man was a reserve officer of the Ukrainian Secret Services, and he began his career in the Soviet KGB. My passport was restored. I had a normal amount of money that I had managed to save during that year and a half, and I went back to Russia. I thought that this was the end of my nightmare, but it wasn't. There were other people living at the address where I used to live with my family. I found out that my husband declared me missing, filed for divorce, sold this apartment, and bought a new one, bigger and in a more prestigious area. He took my mother to his place and took custody of my daughter. I went through a full course of rehabilitation, first in a clinic, then in a sanatorium. Psychologists worked with me, I had money, and then I learned to be a hairdresser. I told the police everything and even filed a complaint, but they languidly promised me that Interpol would deal with them. And then I tracked down my ex-husband. I will never forget that meeting. He didn't even say hello or ask, but asked what I wanted from them. We sat in a cafe for 3 hours. I deliberately told him everything, but in his eyes I saw not a shadow of sympathy or pity, but only coldness and pity. My husband told me that neither he nor my daughter needed me, and that I should go back to the panel, where I belonged. I told him I wanted to see my daughter and was legally entitled to. He replied with a chuckle, "So sue me?" took a stack of photographs out of his inside pocket and threw them on the table. My benefactor was right. These scumbags did not touch my daughter, but they sent pictures of my husband to an email address where I am with clients. My husband said that I can take them as a memento. He still has, and in court, if I try to fight for my daughter, he will show them. Also let my mother see, and she has a heart condition. She just will not survive it. In addition, he recorded our entire conversation on the phone, where I poured out his soul, hoping for forgiveness, understanding, and sympathy. I had never seen my husband like that. He had always been a soft body, ready to step over himself, to forgive anything. But here I saw before me a completely different person, cruel, cold, who did not hide his pity and hatred for me, despite the fact that he had once loved me. Of course, on the one hand I understood him. I had betrayed him, but I had paid the price. My husband told me not to come to our house anymore, or else everyone would find out, even my daughter. He told her that I was dead, that before my betrayal, I was a loving wife and caring mother. Let the daughter will remember me as such. Better let her think of her mother as dead than as the one who betrayed her family, ran off with her lover, and became a prostitute, even if the latter was not of her own free will. So what difference does it make? I tried to talk to my mother, but I met neither understanding nor sympathy. She said that I would not dare anywhere near the daughter, whom I abandoned, and not to convince them that it was not so. Now I don't even know what I should do. I often remember all the good times we had with our family and with my husband, how he was kind to me, but I didn't appreciate it. So I ask if it's worth the fight. I really want to see my daughter. I miss her very much, and I miss my husband too. I do not judge his behavior and do not hope that he will ever forgive me, but I was left all alone. What do I do now? I repent of everything. What's the bottom line? At the moment, I am working as a hairdresser in a high-end salon. Divorced. My only daughter lives with her ex-husband, and I am in my late grandmother's apartment. The mother also lives at her ex-husband's house, and they do not communicate with me. They also do not let me see my daughter. Well, friends, and I warned you that the story was going to be creepy. Didn't I? I don't know about you, but I had a hard time reading it, to be honest. I don't know if it's because it's a narrative on behalf of a girl, a woman, or because with each new sentence I realized that, unfortunately, this story could very well be real. You know what I mean, friends, don't you? But unfortunately, this is our reality, and we have no other. As for the main character in this story, oh, I'm looking forward to your comments, and I'm sure that once again, your opinion is the same as mine. Yes, this is an outrageous situation. Especially when I read how she was calling this family hers, saying she misses her husband and such. I couldn't get one thing out of my head. And then you held back again, didn't let your emotions come out in the form of a red word. And I'm sorry, let's go back. So that's what you were thinking, please tell me, when you left for a better life. What a luxury, what a better life for you and your daughter, of course. Except I'm sure none of us, not me, not the listeners, not the subscribers, no one would believe it. What husband, what mother, what relatives, if they stayed there, any mutual friends, because let's be honest, you went there thinking only of yourself. Otherwise, how could you leave your daughter? Okay, to hell with the husband. Well, there are hundreds or even thousands of such stories. We've heard about 100 of them here on the channel alone, right? But what were you thinking when you left a little girl who loves her mother alone in the country? That's one moment I wouldn't forgive you for. I'm sorry, we're on a first-name basis, but I don't think you'll be offended.